Happy Friday. We are going to explore the topic of gender roles and how they play out in the Matrix game. We have men and women, male and female. These are the epitome of the duality that lives within the source player within the game. These are the physical avatar representations of the duality characteristics of source players. Males, men, women, females, they each embody different characteristics, a general blueprint of those different sexes. And so men will have certain characteristics. They're more masculine. Masculinity is associated with men, and misogyny and things like that. And then on this side, you have women, and femininity is associated with them, and different aspects of womanhood. We have these separated. Now, this is not black and white. There's exceptions to every rule. Not everybody is going to be fully in one way or the other way, right? But for all intents and purposes of this video, this is what I'm talking about, because they are generally, I think there is a clear line of delineation where these things are present in one and more so than in the other, okay? And we have embodied these roles. Society has these ideas, these blueprints, constructs, whatever you want to use, of how a woman acts, what a woman does, what a woman is, and what the same for a man, okay? And I think historically, when you look at the different gender roles and how they interact with each other, the men are the takers and the women are the givers. You cannot agree with me, but that's the reality. And again, it's not 100% black and white across the board, because there are taker women and there are taker men, okay? And they could be source player or non-source player or entity or whatever. But I think the predominance rule is that women are givers, men are takers. Why is that the case? Well, that is the way our societies have programmed us to think and act. We have pre-programming within us, just like anything else. So women, many source player women have made the choice that was within their script to have a relationship, maybe get married, and maybe have children. Or maybe they had a relationship, maybe they didn't get married, and maybe they had children. The choices that I'm talking about is that the choices that they've made have put them into a caregiver role for another person, source player or otherwise. Whether it is your husband, whether it is your children, you have taken that choice for your life, and you now have people in your life that you care for outside of yourself. And what often happens with women is that they will sacrifice their own needs, their own emotional needs, mental, physical, all needs. They will sacrifice themselves for the others, and especially including their energy. And on the flip side, men have been given the privilege of being entitled to all of what women give. And that doesn't necessarily only limit those men to the spouse or romantic partner in their life. Men, on the whole, but again, not 100%, okay? We're not splitting hairs. Men have historically taken more from women, because women were property. So in the very essence of that, men have taken women as property. So you have been, not you, okay, but the genders have taken more from women than women have taken from men. Because women were programmed in different timelines where we didn't have rights to own property. We didn't have rights to perhaps work more than, whatever. Women didn't have the right to vote, all these different things. So women absolutely had to rely on men, whether it was their father or somebody that they were married off to, that their father paid a dowry to, and that man took that woman off of the father's hands. And then that woman became that man's property. So men have been entitled. Women fall into this role of being this caregiver. And what I'm saying is that men don't just assume that the romantic partners in their lives are going to meet their needs, but men assume that any woman in their sphere will meet their needs. Okay? Emotional needs, physical needs, and I don't mean just sex. I'm talking about like physical needs, like cooking, cleaning, things like that, okay? But more the emotional lifting for these men and doing a lot of the mental and emotional work for men, especially when it comes in the dynamic of being in a relationship with them. But often men will latch themselves onto women in their workplace if they work in a place where there's, men and women working, and they will often form a friendship or relationship with a woman. And in some way, shape, or form, she's filling a need of his, whether it's validation, whether it's companionship, whether she's caring for him. The work wife, work husband dynamic is real, what they consider work wife and work husband. But men expect their daughters, their sisters, their mothers, and any other female in their surroundings to just cater to them and just give them their, and the most important thing is they will give them their energy, because they're doing all these things. They are caring for this man's needs that he is not willing to do. And so he's not maturing or growing or becoming self-reliant. He's convincing himself that he is, because maybe he's a the breadwinner, okay? And he goes to work, but what else does he do? Maybe he tinkers on things. Maybe he cuts the lawn or hires somebody to cut the lawn. But what is the man really doing? What is he doing internally? Nothing. More than likely. Okay? And again, if you're getting offended by what I'm saying, you need to examine that. You need to unpack that. And if you truly know within your heart, within yourself, within your internal, that that's not true about you, then you should have no problem with what I'm saying. But if you do have a problem with it, then that's hitting something. Okay? So now there's that. But on the flip side, women, like I said, because women were property and women couldn't do these things for themselves for like maybe up until like the last 60 years, where women had emancipation and liberation and autonomy. And only now, within this century, this decade, have women really, really empowered themselves, like at least what you can see. And not everybody, because everybody's still on different, financial and socioeconomical levels, okay? But more often than not, you see that there are women that are really standing on their own. and they are not willing to cater to men anymore. And I mean, there's a whole other thing going on with that, but I mean, at its core, and I can say 100% with certainty for myself, this is the case. I lived on my own for 8 years when I lived in New Hampshire. So that's a long stretch of time to live by yourself where you're not catering to anybody. You don't have to worry about anybody else's needs because you live by yourself. You reside by yourself. And then I lived for 8 years by myself when I lived here in Stamford before I had to leave my apartment. And for the last almost year and a half now, I've been on my own where I haven't had to consider anybody else's anybody else's needs other than animals and my clients, but I'm not actively with my clients. But I'm saying on the day to day, I only have to consider my needs. And because I've had such a level of independence, I don't want to meet anybody's needs. However, when I've had situations where I've made the choice to ask somebody for help with my living situation, I have made concessions. I have molded myself to that environment, to that situation to make things easier for myself and to make things be less, how do I say, so that it doesn't seem like a burden, okay, to have me in a particular situation. Case in point, when I lived at my brother's house, my brother was very volatile. He will tell you otherwise, but I've noticed this devolvation. He has really become an abusive person. And he's become, but he's an NPC. And he's become abusive towards his wife, verbally. He's become neglectful to his family. And the time that I stayed there, I know my brother. He doesn't think I know him, but I know him better than he knows himself. And I'm also somebody, when I'm in an environment that I'm not fully control of, that I'm in somebody else's environment, I am observing everybody. I'm observing how people are saying things to me, about the things they're saying to me, about the things they're doing, or not even doing to me, but I am observing everything. And one thing I would observe is his moods. And I think anybody that has had some kind of trauma in their life, whether you've grown up in an abusive household, I know you know what I'm talking about, where you assess what is going on and whose mood is going to set off the room or the home or whatever, because the most emotionally dysregulated person in any given situation is the one that controls the whole situation. So in order to mitigate that, I would attempt to predict the future. I would attempt to anticipate his needs. And I would do things, buy things, cook things that would please him so that he would just not be the jackass that he was. Okay. But again, most of the time he was directing this towards his wife. She don't care, but nevertheless, it's an abusive situation. And I didn't like experiencing it. I didn't like being witness to it because it puts people in bad situations. So that's what I would do. I don't have to do that anymore. I don't have to do that for anybody anymore. And until you live by yourself without having to take care of children, without having to take care of a husband or a wife or parents or siblings or anything, you really don't understand how much you give of yourself or how much you take from others. Men don't have the right to a woman's time or energy. You don't have that right. And women do not have to be obligated to anybody. Perhaps their children. because they've born those children into life, into this world. And if they are under a certain age, you're still caring for their lively, their well-being. You have an obligation to continue raising those children. I mean, you don't really have the obligation. You could pass that obligation off, as we know, but I'm saying, okay, most mothers keep their children. And so it's very important to examine your actions, your roles as a woman or as a man. What are you doing as a woman that is betraying yourself? What is betraying your intuition? Your intuition are your boundaries. What are you doing that you don't necessarily want to do, but you're doing it, you're sacrificing your own needs for the sake of somebody else? Let's just take children out of the equation. What are you doing that you don't want to do for other people that are thinking they are entitled to your time and energy? And men, what are you expecting and thinking you're entitled to by women? This is all duality, and the goal is to be neutral. And the goal is to be completely whole and complete. And that means that you are self-sufficient in every possible way, that you can manage your own emotional needs, your own mental needs, your own physical needs, your own avatar, etc., ad nauseum. And I want to just encourage people to explore those roles and how people are imposing those roles upon each other or imposing them upon themselves. And that's what I'm going to leave you with for today. Thank you very much, and you'll all have a great weekend. Bye.